Engage him. Not hide in a hole, in a foxhole, and wait for him to attack. Do you get that's why people walk away from Jesus? It's because somewhere along the way as Christians, we began to believe that we're not to attack the enemy. We're supposed to just wait for him to kind of throw flaming arrows and just hide. Do you get that? I want to ask you something. If that's the way we live, who are we saying has the most power in our lives? Who is supreme? Remember, the Lord is supposed to be supreme. You see, we see this in verse 12. He continues on. He says, "For our struggle is not against the flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms." Do you get it? Your enemy does not have flesh. Let me say it again. Your enemy does not have flesh. Now, he maybe uses people in the flesh to promote his schemes. I get that. But understand, your neighbor is not your enemy. Husbands, your wife, when she hits the snooze button 19 times in the morning, she's not your enemy, right? Wives, when your husband lets the grass grow to 19 inches because he's guaranteed he's only mowing it one more time, he's not the enemy. Satan is the enemy. This last week, you've probably seen of a young man who decided to walk into a community college and shoot people, innocent people. And as Christians, I think it puts us on the spot to figure out how do we respond, right? Some of us maybe respond, it's time for us to get more guns, right? I want to tell you, I have guns. Like, I have guns. But I want you to know something. The issue for that young man, I think, is not, and was not, that he had a gun. His issue was that Satan was using him for his dark schemes. And the question is, how do we fight against that? It's being prepared with the armor that God himself gets us. So church, this morning, hear this. Be 100% sure who your enemy is. Be 100% sure. Because we can wage a war against the wrong enemy in not a very humble way. We can wage a war against those who we think are the enemy. And unfortunately, the church does a really bad job at this. Is that when negativity or crisis hits, we're the first to try to figure out whose fault it is. Do you want to know something? If it's not of God, you know whose fault it is? Across the board. Satan. Satan. He's the one that's behind it. And who we point to, and all he wants to do, remember, is not to knock you completely off the cart. He just wants to stir the pot just enough so you take your eyes off who God is. Who God is. You see, there's a moment in Jesus' ministry that he came face to face with the enemy. I mean, I think he came face to face with him all the time, like consistently, constantly. Hear that, church. If you're walking where God wants you to walk, you will encounter Satan's schemes. And I just want to give this note of encouragement. If you don't think you've ever been tempted by Satan or Satan hasn't attacked you, there's two things happening. One is you're ignorant, right? Because everyone has been. Or secondly, you're not walking where God's asked you to walk. But here, pick it up. I want you to turn this morning in Luke chapter 4. There's this moment where Jesus is doing some teaching, and all of a sudden there's this moment where he comes literally face to face with the schemes of Satan. It says, in a synagogue there was a man possessed by a demon, an impure spirit. Hold on real quick. Listen to this. Satan does show up to church. Did you know that? Let me say it again. Satan does show up to church. For those of you who come to hide from Satan, I want to let you know, you can't hide from him here. Like he's active and around. The reality is we can engage him and ask him to go, right? So in the synagogue where all the Jewish elite hang out, where they go to get away and do their little things that they think they're going to make them right, Satan shows up. It doesn't just show up, he shows up and he has been inside. He's in, one of his demons is infiltrated a man. It says this, he cried out at the top of his voice, "Go away. What do you want from us, Jesus of Nazareth? Have you come to destroy us? I know who you are, the Holy One of God." Hold on quick. Who says this? Who's speaking this? Let's do a little cross-examination. Not the Jewish elite. Not even the man. But the one, the demon, the impure spirit that is inside the man. But notice the cranky-dink this morning. It says, what do you want to do with who? Us. That means there's more than one demon flowing in this man. And notice what they recognize about Jesus. And this should be challenged to us as the believers who have professed Jesus as Lord and Savior. They recognize Jesus as the Holy One. And they also say this. It also says, you know what? What do you want to do? Destroy us? He doesn't ask that as a rhetorical question. He knows that Jesus has the power to cast them gone. And look what Jesus says. I love this. Be quiet. Don't you like that? Isn't that funny, church? Jesus, demon possessions going on. And all Jesus says, just be quiet. Just be quiet. Like there's a lot of jargon going on with you, demon. Just be quiet. And the NIV it says, Jesus said sternly. Like, I love that. It's like a kid's book. Jesus said sternly. And continues on, it says, come out of him. Then the demon threw the man down before all of them and came out without injuring him. You see what happened there? Jesus removes the demon, casts him out of the man, and guess who still walks and is better than he was before? The man. Why? Because Jesus engaged him. This is the best part, I think, after the healing takes place. It says, all the people were amazed and said to each other, what words these are? With authority and power he gives orders to impure spirits, and they come out. And the news about him spread throughout the surrounding area. Church, this morning as we talk through this, I want you to know having confidence in battle comes from knowing who God is. Confidence in battle, in this spiritual war that is raging, that confidence comes from knowing God. It doesn't come from knowing more about God. It comes from knowing God. And this morning, I want to walk us through real quick who God is. And this is a really high-level kind of deal, a few scriptures, but I want you to be reminding you of who God is. Who is it that you came into this place today to worship? Right? With all the baggage, all the stirring, all the things Satan's doing, this is who you came to worship today. The first thing is God is all-knowing. Do you know that? Psalm 147:4 says this, he determines the number of the stars and calls them each by name. Now you go, well, that just sounds like a really good worship song, right? What that means is do you know there's stars you can't see? I'm going to help with this astronomy here. There are stars you cannot see. There's galaxies which are out there, and we can't see them with even our own little greatest telescope we can get at the department store. God knows all of them by name. If God knows them all by name, then he knows what's going on in our hearts. You see here in Romans 11, it says this, oh, the depth of the riches of the wisdom and knowledge of God. He who has the mind of the Lord. Right? Is that the God who we are serving, the one that we're trying to grow to be humble before, if we struggle with humility before God, here, this might help. God is bigger, better, and badder than any of us could ever be collectively together by ourselves. And it says, who has the mind of the Lord? You see, if that's not enough, what about God being all-powerful? It says this, is anything too hard for the Lord? Genesis 18. Don't you love that? Is speaking in the story in context, he says, God says, is anything too hard for the Lord? Has God ever said that to you before? Is anything too big for me? Is anything too big for me to fix in your own, to recommend, to reconcile within the church? Is anything too big for him? It's a rhetorical question because the answer is no. And in Job 41:2, I love what Job says this, I know you can do all things. No purpose of yours can be thwarted. That's what Job has to say. And I just want to let you know this. If God knowing everything and can doing anything isn't enough, maybe this is. He is everywhere all the time. All the time. So even, listen to this, even as the demon-possessed man comes into the temple, guess who's there? God. And guess who had him leave? God. Named Jesus. It says in Proverbs 15:3 says, the eyes of the Lord are everywhere, keeping watch on the wicked and the good. That's why when tragedy hits, as the church, we don't need to try to find a solution to fix it right away. What we need to know is that God sees it all and can do anything he wants at any time. That doesn't mean we sit on our hands. It means we trust in God and ask him for his wisdom. And here's the part that's maybe the most encouraging to you all, is that God is unchanging. Malachi 3:6 says, I am the Lord, do not change. Right? Now you go, good, I hate change. No. It means he's constant. It means who he said he was at creation is who he's going to be when Jesus comes back again and clear through eternity. And what about in Hebrews 13? It says Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever. You see, we ask the question, I guess we get to this point, is so what does that mean for us? What does that mean for us? If God is constant and Jesus sees these, he came face to face with Satan, and we have the ability to do the same thing and be triumphant on the other side, what does that mean for us? I think the question he poses, what is our MO? What is our marching orders? Like, what are we asked to do with this? Look at verse 16 of Ephesians 6. I love how he comes back to what he already said. He says, therefore, put on the full armor of God, so when the day of evil comes, you may stand your ground, and after you have done everything, to stand. Right? Church, I want you to hear that. Our job is to trust in God, put on his armor, and stand. Stand. And you say, well, wait a minute, Nate, if I'm going to be humble, how do I stand and be humble? Do you know there's people who stand for God and stand with him every day and are completely humble? It's not an arrogant thing to stand where God calls us to stand. But then even if you stand, you say, so what do I do? How do I battle this then? Well, look at verse 20. Paul gives it. He says, pray that I may declare it fearlessly as I should. What's he say there? What is the command he gives to the church in Ephesus, or the encouragement of how it is that he's asking them to pray on his behalf so he can battle against this himself? He says, pray. This last week, I had a text message that came to me from a lady in the church, and she texted and said this. I want to let you know, she sent it to me and her husband. I want to let you know I volunteered you guys to move a guy to Holton next week. Hope it goes well. Okay? That's what she texted me. And at first I'm like, huh? And I kind of look at it, and I love what her husband said. Her husband says, how? Why? That's all he said in the text. How? Why? Like, what? How do we get volunteered? But I love what she said. And she says, I came in contact with him. I think he needs a little bit of Jesus. And went, Church, as we said this morning, I want to show you this hashtag that's coming up for these next few weeks. I think we have that. I want you to put this out there if you can. And some of you are right away, we got to explain this. I've had people go, what's a hashtag? Like, what does that even mean? Okay, like, I don't do those things. It's like the government get my social security number. You already have your social security number, okay? It's not the case, all right? And really all it does is it organizes things in social media. So if someone put hashtag whatever, you can type it in and you see what everyone else has in the same idea, all right? So be careful what you hashtag, okay? Let me put it that way, all right? And so I want you to think through this week, over the next 3, 4, 5 weeks, is I want you to really honestly consider when it seems as though that the mountain is tall, when Satan is attacking, no one else will need to know what it is. But you can just put this, hashtag I pray. Can you do that? Can you do that? And some of you are like, I don't use social media. It's okay, write it on your hand and take a picture and like take a Polaroid and then mail it in the mail. Okay, whatever you need to do with it. But I want us to do this as a church and put that out there. And there's the reason why. Is I think sometimes we get focused on what the problem is, right? If you look at social media, usually we tell everyone how horrible our day was or what we ate every meal. Like, that's really the stories behind it. But what if we stop focusing on what the issue is and just submitting it to God, and that's how we stand? As we say, we're going to pray. We're going to give it to God. So I want you to do this morning. If you have a device, a phone or a tablet or whatever you have, even if you have one of those little flippy kind, right? That's completely fine. It'll still work, I promise, right? I want you to do this. I want you to just hashtag I pray to remind you to do this. I'd love to see us blow this up over the next few weeks as a church that we come together. Coming together to pray collectively is what we try to do every week, is what we do in our life groups. But what if we were praying for each other 24 hours a day, 7 days a week through these next few weeks through this hashtag? Because I believe the way that we stay humble and the way we pursue the enemy, the way we resist the enemy, it's not through a better Bible study necessarily. It's not even through more people in your life group. It's through getting on your knees and saying, God, you got to fight it. I'm here to be in your army. I'm here to go where you need me to go. Churches, as you stand and the band comes, we're going to